You are right. I do have the power. I have all the power in the world!
One of the reasons Avatar is so amazing is because its villains were incredible. Zuko and Azula, as well as Mei and Ty Lee, were so complex and layered. They faced turmoil and inner conflict and had incredible depth, and that's why they're all so popular. By contrast, Fire Lord Ozai is one of the less popular villains. He's not disliked necessarily, but he's definitely criticized for taking an inactive role in the story. After all, it's Azula who conquers Ba Sing Se, Zhao who kills the Moon Spirit, Azula who kills Aang and suggests burning down the Earth Kingdom. So, is Ozai a bad villain? Well, he's definitely the baddest villain in the show, if you know what I'm saying. Sometimes I think, I wonder why the Fire Nation follows this genocidal, crazy man. And then I look at him without a shirt and I'm like, hey, maybe fire is the superior element.
Don't be intimidated, Squidward. Try to imagine him in his underwear. Oh no, he's hot!
Anyway, I don't think Ozai is a bad villain. I think he's a really good villain. Let me explain. And before we get into it, guys, if you like my content, please consider subscribing. It helps out the channel a lot. The most common criticism I see of Ozai is that he's static, simplistic, and not layered. But is this necessarily a bad thing? There are a million static villains out there. Joker in The Dark Knight, Voldemort in Harry Potter, Palpatine from Star Wars. There are some people that are just so evil that they don't need depth. And Ozai is definitely this type of villain. The hype that he got in books 1 and 2 was actually insane. We knew he was this discipline-obsessed monster who didn't hesitate to scar his own son's face, even as Zuko was on his knees pleading. We know he's power-hungry, and according to Azula, willing to kill Zuko at the behest of Fire Lord Azulon. And importantly, we don't see his face. This is a brilliant narrative device. You keep his face a mystery not because he's someone we already knew or anything like that. It's because for the first 2 books, he's a monster. To Zuko, he's hardly a person, just the faceless representation of his honor of the perfect Fire Lord of what Zuko should be. But in Season 3, once Zuko comes home, once he finally has what he's yearning for, we see Ozai's face, and he's just a guy. The revelation of Ozai's face symbolizes the shattering of the pedestal that Zuko puts him on. We see his face, and he is human. And unlike faceless representations, humans can be wrong. Ozai was a driving force behind the plot. He didn't cause the Air Nomad genocide or start the war, but he's, throughout the entire series, the primary antagonist. Remember, Ozai is the reason that Iroh isn't Fire Lord. Ursa is the one that killed Azulon, but she only had to do that because Azulon had ordered the death of Zuko, which happened because of Ozai's ambition. Ozai is also the reason Zuko is banished, and the reason why the world even knew that the Avatar was still alive. Remember, when Aang was revived, everyone had assumed the Avatar was gone. Without a banished Zuko, it might have been way longer until they found him. The whole course of the war could have been different.
How are you not dead?
I have no idea!
Ozai is also the reason Azula is the way that she is. She might have had some problematic tendencies from childhood, but Ozai is the reason she's such a perfectionist, and the reason she's such a Fire Nation loyalist. I covered this a bunch in my Azula video, which you should check out if you haven't already. So even in seasons 1 and 2, where his face isn't shown, and he has a grand total of like 3 lines, he's the major driving force behind the show's events. For much of the first half of season 3 though, we don't really see him do anything.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
Our introduction to Ozai as a villain, the first time he actually does anything bad on screen, is this scene. And this scene was an absolute masterclass in tension and good writing. Zuko stands before a depowered Ozai during the eclipse and confronts the man who destroyed his life. He tells him that the Agni Kai was cruel and wrong, and that his uncle was more of a father than Ozai had ever been. And this completes Zuko's transition from villain to hero, as he vows to help Team Avatar defeat the Fire Nation. But there's also a shift for Ozai in this scene. For the first half of Season 3, Zuko was a villain, but he was still a protagonist. We were still seeing the world through his eyes, just like we had been for books 1 and 2, and Ozai was his ally. But following Zuko's betrayal, Ozai shifts to an antagonist, and we get a sense for just how threatening this man can be. First, he doesn't let Zuko just leave and join the Avatar. He starts with manipulation, goading Zuko with the one thing that only he can provide: information on his mother. And Zuko, of course, sticks around. And just when the eclipse fades, he launches a full frontal attack of lightning onto Zuko, no hesitation. In the span of 30 seconds, Ozai is established as manipulative and intelligent and incredibly powerful. Of course, Zuko redirects his lightning back at him and escapes, but we understand just how threatening Ozai is nonetheless. And then we get the finale. I'm not a fan of how Ozai was handled here. The stuff with Azula was amazing, and goes to show that he never really cared about her beyond as a pawn. But what is this, man? What is this drip? How are you gonna say fire is a superior element when you're dressed like a beetle wearing pajamas? I appreciate that Avatar is a kid's show, but come on, man. It's hard to take this man seriously when he's spouting stuff like this. And Phoenix King, you're killing me. Even Suki makes fun of him for this. Imagine being the best firebender in the world, but you're the one getting roasted.
After generations of Fire Lords failed to find you, now the universe delivers you to me as an act of providence.
Okay.
He wasn't really this threatening, larger-than-life figure that he'd been up until this point. He would have died multiple times if it hadn't been for Aang holding back. And even the plan to burn the Earth Kingdom to the ground was Azula's idea, not his. With that said, his power is still incredible, and he's still a psychotic monster whose downfall we're actively rooting for. You could definitely say Ozai is the least layered villain in the show, but that doesn't make him a bad villain. In fact, I'd argue that without the presence of a truly evil force, we'd have nothing to contrast Zuko and, to a lesser extent, Azula with. It is Ozai's presence that creates the complexity in their characters, both from a narrative perspective and literally because his presence has a huge impact on their lives. He might not have the depth of his children, but Ozai played his role in the story to perfection, and that's why he's a great villain. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing, liking, and hitting the bell. I make Avatar and anime content twice a week, and I put a lot of thought into it, so it would mean a lot to me if you subscribed. Let me know in the comments what you think of Ozai, and